you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah. Gotta get away from this illusion. For the sake of the world, this delusion. It's gotta go. Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm the guest host this week, Jeff D. The co-host today is Don Baker.
Hey, good to be here.
Good to have you. It's April 11. We're broadcasting live from Austin, Texas. This is a call-in program. The number will go up in a little while. If you're not watching the show live, you can tune in on Sundays from 4:30 to 6 p.m. and watch the show on Time Warner or Grande Cable Channel 16, or you can watch the show over the internet from almost anywhere in the world via Ustream, and if it's working, the Channel Austin stream. For more information, you can visit the show's website at www.atheist-community.org. This show is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a non-profit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road every Sunday at 11:30, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series that takes place at the Austin History Center. We had one of those today, right? Mm-hmm. Let's see. The Austin History Center is located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Lectures are at 12:15, and I guess the next lecture will be next month. I don't have the correct information here in front of me. But for information on that and on other things about the ACA, you can visit the www.atheist-community.org site. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly audio podcast called The Non-Prophets. That's P-R-O-P-H-E-T-S. Yesterday's show should now be available. Wait, there wasn't a show yesterday. My information is correct. They didn't have a show yesterday, but past shows are available at www.nonprofitsradio.com, and there will be more shows live in future. You can find the schedule there. If you don't manage to contact us over the telephone today, or if you don't want to, and you can send comments and questions to our email address, tv@atheist-community.org. In addition to the media outreach programs, the ACA also sponsors a number of social events, including Atheist Happy Hour on Thursdays at 7 p.m. at the Dog and Duck Pub at 7th and Guadalupe, and dinner after this program is at roughly 6:30 at Threadgills at 301 West Riverside Drive. And that's our announcements.
Yeah. And the dinner, folks are welcome to come down after watching the show. You can come down and visit with us and have dinner and break bread and all that good stuff.
That's open to the public thing. Just don't come down there to preach at us or proselytize at us. If you just want to have a conversation, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Now, we were talking just before we went on the air here. You and I have never done, as far as we can recollect, never done the Atheist Experience together before.
That's right. We're both long-time contributors to the show, but we've never been on together.
Though once, 500 years ago, according to you, you were on the audio show
right,
with
the Non-Profits,
me.
right,
the
back when you were running that.
That's been quite a long time. Well, what do you have for us today?
Well, today I'd like to talk about the prosperity gospel.
Okay.
And I just find it very kind of humorous because, well, one of the ironies is there are a lot of religious people don't believe in evolution, but you can take a look at the prosperity gospel, and it's an example of religions evolving. Religions adapt to the needs of their hosts, and they adapt to their environment. And schisms are like speciation events where you get two different species. And because of all these changes and all these variations and all these evolution going on, there's no omniscient God. There's no obvious fixed thing that they're commenting on or related to, right? If there were a God, there wouldn't be so much variation and all these changes and things.
And the prosperity gospel is a particular variation?
Is a particular variation.
Well, what's it all
let's
about?
look at some of the variations, variations in human needs, right? Humans have a need for love, and there's many churches that go that. If hate is your thing, you can go join one of the Fred Phelps churches or whatever. If you want to have multiple wives, you can go be a Mormon. If you want to screw little boys, you can go be a Catholic. Or if you're into Schadenfreude or enjoying other people's suffering, then you can be a rapture theologist. But if you're into greed, if greed is your thing, prosperity gospel's for you.
Did you happen to notice in this, I think it was this past week, the KKK came out with a press release repudiating Fred Phelps and his God Hates Fags organization. When the KKK has to, feel
out of
it's
its way to
necessary disassociate itself from you, wow, it's pretty amazing. But so what is the prosperity gospel thing all about?
Well, that's just it. I want to talk about what it is, how it works. Excuse me, why it appeals to people, maybe some of the biblical support and what some of the implications are. And you'll have to beat up on me if I'm going long.
Go for it.
So prosperity theology, or prosperity doctrine, or the health and wealth gospel, is a belief found among tens of millions of people, centered on the notion that God provides material prosperity for those he favors. So if you're God's little buddy, he's going to shower you with gifts, and that believers have a right to the blessings, health, and wealth that they can obtain, and they can obtain those blessings through positive confessions of faith and the sowing of seeds through faithful payments of tithes and offerings. So there's sort of two parts to the prosperity gospel. One is the expectation, living and breathing the expectation that you are blessed by God, and that you deserve these blessings and these sorts of things. And if that means going out and buying a new car that you may or may not be able to afford, that's part of the deal. The flip side of it is you got to make God happy by tithing to the church and giving to your church a lot. And that's the sowing the seeds part of it. And there's many ministers in this prosperity gospel will claim 100-fold return. That if you pay $1 to the church, eventually you're going to get $100 back. So it's really a very almost crass sort of financial thing.
So they're telling their followers to have an expectation of income?
Yes.
As long as they pay their tithes and do their blessings?
Yes.
And then they go out and actually spend money before they've got it on that expectation?
That is true, and that's a problem, isn't it?
I would think so.
You would think so.
Well, not if it was all true.
Yeah, so here's a quote by from Osteen, who is a famous preacher here in Houston. One of God's top priorities is to shower blessings on Christians in this lifetime, and by the corollary assumption that one of the worst things a person can do is to expect anything less.
Oh my gosh!
Isn't that interesting? So how it works? How it works from an outsider's perspective is it's a heads I win, tails you lose sort of thing. So you have a big congregation, you preach this gospel, and if anybody in the congregation gets a promotion or a new job or some sort of windfall from great Aunt Irma dying and giving them money in their will, whatever, you claim that as a success. And this is God's blessing to that person, and gosh, it's working, and so on, right? And you really tout these successes, and it's a kind of a confirmation bias thing. If somebody doesn't get a payout, then there's a couple things you can do. You can say, well, it'll come. It's
right.
Come.
It's too soon.
Or you just need to be more faithful, and you need to follow the Scripture more, and these sorts of things. Or you need to tithe more. Right? So to blame the victim.
It's like a Christian version of The Secret, which was the same kind of
Exactly. There's a lot of similarity between these. Is this expectation, this wishful thinking, and living this way. And if it doesn't work out, there's something wrong with you.
You know, that guy, the secret guy, got arrested for getting some people killed in a, what do you call it, an Indian
oh, right.
sweat lodge.
Right. right? He was putting people through the paces in order to make their religious experience more meaningful or something, right?
Yeah.
Ended up killing how many of them? He killed them?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I don't want to just throw out a number by guessing, but it was several.
Several. Okay. So it's kind of, from my standpoint, it's a transparent scam. So that's what I see. And this is a relatively new thing. Oral Roberts kind of cooked this up. Although, there's threads of it long ago, right? The Calvinist theology is about, you can't change anything, and if somebody is rich in this world, it's because God likes them. There's strains of that going way back, right. But it's a relatively new thing. It's taken over. In Africa. A lot of Christian churches. This is a big money-making thing in Africa is to be a minister over there and preach this stuff. And there's videos on the web, and I was trying to look one up for the Atheist Experience blog, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, so why does it appeal? Well, 61% of Christians in the U.S. believe that God wants people to be prosperous. So that's a large percentage of Christians that think God ought to do this, right? 31% of people in the United States believe that if you give your money to God, He will bless you with more money.
Yeah, I was raised in a Methodist household, and even though there was no explicit preaching of anything I'd call the prosperity gospel from the pulpit, there was still this sort of swirling set of assumptions that, yeah, you got to keep putting your money into the collection plate or you're not going to get your bennies.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's a very appealing sort of message from a minister's point of view, right? Because after all, they're trying to make some money here.
Is there in fact any evidence that it works?
I don't think so.
Anybody done a study that you know of?
No, I don't.
Whether
I don't know
the
that
people
anybody's
that are involved in these congregations are in fact any wealthier than anybody else on average?
Well,
or
their
wealth increases after being
there's
involved?
a very interesting article, kind of jumping ahead a little bit. There's a very interesting article that was published in the Atlantic Monthly called "Did Christianity Cause the Crash?" And I don't like the title of that article. I think a more apropos title would be, "Did the prosperity gospel contribute to the crash?" And in that article, the author, I've forgotten her name, makes the point that you can go back and look at some of the churches that are promoting this sort of thing and look at the foreclosure rates in those areas, and they're very much higher. And that she's making a link between this way of thinking of looking like a success and being a success, or looking like you are wealthy,
right.
And expecting these blessings, to tripping up people financially and getting away from these sound sort of fiscal management sorts of practices.
So in fact, there's evidence of the opposite. That
yes.
That it not only it doesn't just have no effect, it actually is financially dangerous for people.
Right. And I do want to talk about the implications.
Yeah, okay,
some
I'm
of
sorry.
the implications a little bit later.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the popularity of the thing. We have 31% of the people that believe that if you give your money to God, that He'll bless you. Well, this is especially true among blacks and Hispanics. Apparently, believe this sort of thing even more so. And so there's actually a huge untapped market, given these statistics I just gave, based on the number of people who are in the prosperity gospel and the number of people who it might appeal to. This is definitely a growing thing. It's a trend. We're going to see a lot more of this, I think. It's an appealing message, and you see it commonly with these very big evangelical preachers like. Where's my list here? Joel Osteen is one, although he claims that he never talks about money directly. He talks about blessings, which is interesting. But there's a whole host of these professors that are these ministers that do this, and you'll recognize a lot of these names: Kenneth Copeland, Creflo Dollar, Benny Hinn, T.D. Jakes, Joyce Meyer, Peter Popoff, Robert Tilton, and of course Pat Robertson. So all of the big hitters are promoting this, and it's an appealing message. After all, why worship a God that doesn't do anything for you, right? We have these pie in the sky. Oh, you're going to go to heaven, whatever. Why not have a little bit of goodies now? Why not have both, right? So it's very popular, especially in Africa, and it's very popular in populations, I think, that are poor and desperate and gullible, right? The desperation, you know, this really sort of plays into people's desperation, like, I got to get out of this situation. What's the way to do it?
Well, like the lottery.
Like the lottery. Yeah, it's kind of like that. So in 50...
The only difference is with the lottery, there is, in fact, an organization in place that might give you some money.
Right.
That's known for a fact.
The money is real there. I mean, it's
Wow.
just more of a matter of how well can you estimate the odds there.
Mm-hmm.
Here, there's no guarantee at all, of course. So 50 of the largest 260 Christian U.S. churches push the prosperity gospel. So
What's that numbers?
50 of the largest 260 churches in the U.S. push that, and
Okay.
and it's pretty, and it's not really a theology. It's more of an add-on to whatever theology they're already talking about. So you see it a lot in evangelical churches. So, and God has gone out of His way to give support for this, right? God has gone out of His way to make these people honest. And how has He done that? You're all ears.
I'd love to know.
Well, there's a lot of biblical support, it turns out. There are apparently hundreds of Bible quotes that talk about money, and some of them can be spun some way, and some of them can be spun the other way, and you've called it the Great Big Book of Multiple Choice, which I enjoy. I call it the Rorschach Test for the morally challenged. So here's some of the verses that they use to support the prosperity gospel. This one's a big one, Malachi 3:10. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house, and provide me now herewith, said the Lord of hosts. If I will not open to you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall be no room enough to receive it. So it's this whole thing of bring your money to God and you'll get a big payout. Let's see. Deuteronomy 29:9, carefully follow the terms of this covenant so that you may prosper in everything you do. Let's see, here's another one. Mark 11:24, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. So there's actually a number of quotes like that. That's Jesus supposedly speaking. So there's quite a bit of Bible quotes you can point at that support this idea. Of course, there's quite a number of Bible quotes that you can point at that support the opposite idea, but you can pick and choose whatever you want, right?
Sure.
So, and too bad there's no God to sort this thing out,
So we got clear evidence from those mortgage. What do you say? The housing failure rates.
Yes.
I'm not using the right words. Clear evidence
Foreclosures.
that foreclosure rates. That's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
That the foreclosure rates indicate that, well, no, the people in those areas are not, in fact, getting wealthier. But there is clearly also one party that is going to get wealthier, and just one, only one, for sure,
Right.
and that would be the church,
Right.
because they get to be the recipients of all these tithes.
Are the largesse, right?
Right.
Because they're telling people that they're giving to God, but there's no God there's no hand of God coming down to grab
That's
the
right.
money.
God does not carry off those bags of loot.
Right.
They go into
Right. So it's almost like the
church's
old
coffers.
days where there'd be some sort of sacrifice given, and then the monks or whatever would come and eat the sacrifice in the middle of the night and
Sure.
party down, whatever. So what are some of the implications of this? This very interesting thing. To me, it's a transparent con. I think if you understand how it works, you can kind of see how people are being conned. That people's desperation are being played on. So the money is going to the con artists instead of charity. So that's another very frustrating thing to me. Is here we are giving tax breaks to these organizations with the idea that supposedly they're charities or charitable, right? There's at least that implication in there. But in reality, what it is people getting as much money as they can.
Let's be as fair as possible here. Do we know that the churches aren't taking any of that money and using it for charitable purposes?
it turns out that a number of these ministers are being investigated on their largesse,
Okay.
and whether or not they are taking what's the word, uncalled for money out of these charities. And there's a Senator Grassley, has been probing the finances of these various folks. I guess there's been a number of complaints. I don't know the status of this. I think this is something that he has been doing for a number of years, and at least since 2007. And I don't know the state of his investigation and these sorts of things, or whether there will be any change in the tax laws due to this. But I hope there is.
Yeah. But it's difficult for anyone to know what a church does with its money, because being tax exempt, they don't have to report.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, that's another area where
it's a formula for abuse, even if there are cases where some of those dollars, go to feed the poor.
That's right.
I guess we could
That's right.
go on a side subject of the strong evidence there is that, in fact, money that goes to churches, most of it does not reach the people it's supposed to be helping.
Yes. Yes,
I don't have those numbers
the
in front of
Catholic
me.
pedophilia thing's another example. Is like
Oh,
a
boy.
lot of that money is going to hush the victims, right, and these sorts of things.
Or now pay lawsuits, and that's
Lawsuits, right? That's another thing, or the spin doctoring. Another problem with this con setup is, the faithful are being robbed. They're being conned, and Rick Warren, as it turns out, to his credit, has spoken against these sorts of things, and he says, I can show you 1 million faithful followers of Christ who live in poverty. Why isn't everybody in the church a millionaire? And he calls it baloney. So, to his credit, I think he has the right answer there.
well, except that you can, in fact, find these verses in the Bible that support it. So, it's just two dueling camps, each grabbing a different set of verses for their
Right. I've
argument.
actually talked with a Christian friend about it, and it was the same sort of thing. It's like, well, God didn't mean it that way. And it's like, well, how do you know that? It's like, I don't
Right,
know.
because that's how I interpret it.
That's how I interpret it. Okay, so another problem here is we get financial pressures for the believers, that people want to believe that they're blessed. They get sucked into this mantra of displays of wealth means that I'm blessed by God, and there's a lot of one-upsmanship in these sorts of environments. And so you end up with people who get unrealistic expectations and who mismanage their money and these sorts of things. And this article, again, why did Christianity cause the crash, or did Christianity cause the crash, by Hannah Rosen, is a very good article, very interesting article. I recommend
And
checking
where did it appear?
The Atlantic Monthly.
Okay.
And also on the Atheist Experience blog, if you're a follower of that, I did a little post this morning that has a link to it, so you can check out that way. And that blog is on is linked from our website.
Well,
And so there is this correlation between the prosperity gospel in certain communities and the high foreclosure rate. In fact, even some of the ministers got into the foreclosure, or into the subprime loan business by promoting this within their churches, which is kind of sad. Another sort of implication is this faith-based charity initiatives under Bush is based on a kind of a similar idea that if you are poor and deserving or needing of government subsidy, then you must be poor in faith. The reason is that you don't believe in God enough.
well, that would be the implication, yeah.
Yeah, and there is the that was the, I think, original genesis of it with Marvin Olosky here in Austin, when he was living here, actually created this idea of the faith-based charity and gave it to Bush when he was governor here, and it was tried out here in Texas years ago. And it's the same sort of thinking, is that, hey, these people are poor. If only they had God, if only they had these, people being ministered to as well, then they wouldn't be poor anymore. And so there's this very odd sort of conflict of interest going on with the churches here. And that the poor non-believers are deserving of their situation. So anybody who's a non-believer is kind of screwed in this whole thing. So let me wrap up here. I think the prosperity gospel is a good demonstration of how Christianity is evolving, how there is no objective basis. There's nobody really running the show, as they claim. There's no God to fix these disagreements. It's a transparent scam. We shouldn't be paying for it as taxpayers, and it's sort of always been that way. It's the new thing, and it's not going away anytime soon. I think we're going to see this for years. This prosperity gospel. So, did you have anything else you wanted to?
No, that was a good presentation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, that was fun. We can take callers now. I know a lot of folks are anxious.
Yes, we have a number of people that have been on the line for a while. We'll start with David in Columbus, Ohio. David?
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Wonderful. Fun talk about the prosperity gospel. Unfortunately, I know nothing about that and didn't call in to talk about that.
That's all right.
That's
what do
fine.
you got for us?
So there's William Lane Craig is one of the big-time heavyweight champion apologists who's going to be coming to our university soon.
Who is it?
William Lane Craig.
Oh, uh-huh.
Coming to Columbus?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. So this has kind of sparked a lot of conversation and stuff going on between a lot of people. And one thing that I've heard while talking to people is that, at least from a Christian's perspective, it's unfortunate that there's no extra biblical evidence for Jesus. You guys?
That's if you can find Christians that will admit to that. It's not unfortunate for those who are going to just hand wave and give you a list of supposed sources that in fact are no good if you look at them, but they believe they're good.
Right. I'm kind of talking. A lot of atheists have said that there's no extra biblical evidence for Jesus.
That's correct.
That is correct.
So this seems to be kind of an unfair point to me because the Bible and the New Testament specifically it's the amalgamation of information about Jesus. It's not like it's one single data point. This is a collection of information that was about Jesus at the time. Treating the New Testament like it's a single source.
So if there had been like some arrest record or a Roman document about this Jesus guy and what a troublemaker he was and we got to do stuff to him, you think that would have made it into the Bible if they'd found it? That doesn't seem very likely to me.
Yeah, probably not. But that's kind of beyond the point. I'm saying that it's not a single.
You don't think it's odd that that this guy's doing miracles and raising the dead and doing all these things and nobody bothered to lift a pen and write about it?
Well, no. What he's saying is what he's saying is, and that's a reasonable question, right? The Bible is a collection of multiple documents, so why doesn't that count, right? Mm-hmm. As the books that were left out would be extra biblical sources. That's that's a good thing you could look at, right? What about the books that didn't make it? Right? What's the crazy Judas gospel that...
Oh, the Gospel of Judas, that's a great one. I like that one.
Says that
it was suicide by
Jesus
cop.
is some alien from a planet?
No.
Is that
the Gospel
the one?
of Judas is where Judas is the hero, and Jesus is saying, hey, I need you to help me shed these clothes. Will you do this for me? Uh-huh. And meaning his body, right? Uh-huh. So it's really, as I said, a suicide by cop where Judas is turning Jesus in so that he can be killed, and that Judas is kind of the hero in this particular one.
I think the point though about the lack of extra biblical sources, it's not probably it would be worth mentioning that the wording of that is not the best. The point is there's no sources outside the group of believers. It's only believers who appear to have written about Jesus. And when I say believers, I mean followers, right?
That's a good point.
You don't hear about, I'm some traveler from Syria, and I thought it was all very crazy, but there was this big crowd gathered, and there was this Jesus guy, and they were saying he was doing miracles. There's none of that. The only people, apparently, who ever wrote about him were people who were already in the religion and already believed. That's the problem.
Well, I wouldn't expect anyone else to write about it. I mean, that's...
Really? Because nobody writes about anything that they saw unless they're a worshiper of it. That doesn't follow.
If someone saw the miracles being performed by Jesus, I think they would become a believer. That would be...
Well, I'm not even talking... I'm just mentioned some traveler, some foreign traveler who didn't see the miracles but just heard about them. There's no examples of contemporaries who just heard about Jesus and mentioned him. None. That's the problem.
Well, those people, the documents they wrote, I don't think there'd be any reason to save those. I mean...
To do what?
To keep
save them?
I'm sure they were... things like that may exist, but it's not like we have every single document ever written from every single...
You're right. There could be sealed away somewhere where nobody has ever seen it for 2,000 years. There could be the proof. But until you find the proof, it's not proof. It doesn't count if it hasn't been found. What's that?
There's no reason to think that we would still have that. It's not like it's sealed away somewhere in some secret safe. I think that, things just don't last forever.
Hey, dude, we have all kinds of ancient documents about all kinds of things. If Jesus was, in fact, the big deal he's supposed to have been at the time, there would have been people who heard about that and wrote it down other than folks who were already in the cult. There would have. So the fact that doesn't exist is a big red flag.
I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I completely understand your point.
Yeah?
But I don't know. I guess I need more time to think about this and process it through. But
all right.
All right. Thanks again.
Yep, thanks for calling.
Thanks, David.
I guess you didn't have anything.
That's
for
fine.
David. Thank you, David. Do I make him go away?
I think you hit drop.
Okay.
We're working
And we will go now to Dan in North Brunswick, New Jersey. Dan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. Thanks for waiting.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I just want to say I'm a real big fan of you guys. I think what you guys are doing is great.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Anyway, so I'm an atheist, and I had some Jehovah's Witnesses come to my house the other day.
Uh-huh.
And
That's always entertaining, isn't it?
And I entertained them and let them talk to me about what they believed and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I'm studying chemistry, so my knowledge of thermodynamics and the Big Bang and physics is pretty good. So I used some of that to explain to them, to actually give them a crash course in physics on how the Big Bang works, because they obviously don't understand. You know what I mean?
Let me guess what happened. They all kind of said uh-huh and ran away.
Yeah, well, they didn't. They haven't come back yet. I told them they can come back and talk to me whenever they wanted. You know what I mean? Because I like debating these things with people. I feel that
they're fishing for souls.
It helps my argument skills in this field, but it also lets them know that there aren't people who you can just come and talk to and think you can just persuade people to do whatever you want. That they're smart people that'll question what you think and argue with you on things like that. So. Some of the questions I had for you guys is the one thing that they asked me, which I couldn't really find a good answer to explain, which is what the purpose of life was. They said to me, well, what's the purpose of life? And I said, to reproduce and to live. That's in the laws of thermodynamics. The way they are, and they wanted to know why the purpose of those laws.
It's a loaded question. It's a loaded question because for there to be a grand purpose, there has to be somebody for whom that purpose is meaningful, right? And it's a loaded question where they're inferring that there's a God to whom the purpose matters.
It's like them starting out by asking who created the universe, right?
Yeah.
Which makes it a question with an assumption that's their assumption, right, from the get-go. What they need to do is show that there needs to be any purpose. Now, there's reasons why things are true. I mean, I can be walking down the street and see a rock in the side of the road, and I can wonder, what is the reason why that rock is there? And then we're talking about the history of all the forces that moved that rock around and shaped it to its current shape. That's not what they're talking about, right? They are trying to shoehorn in the assumption that there's somebody who would have a purpose.
And you may have your own purpose for your own life and your own reasons for doing things, and that's perfectly fine. And that fits in this notion of the purpose of the design or conscious decision making. But as Jeff says, they're just trying to shoehorn in a little spot for their God. So it's a tricky question. It's a subtle thing. And unless you know to look for it, you could easily get tripped up by that.
Okay, I understand what you mean. And another thing I wanted to ask you guys is, I was talking to them, and I told them, that I had read a couple of passages in the Bible, in the Old Testament, that actually preach genocide in the Old Testament, such as Deuteronomy and stuff like that.
Oh,
Now,
sure, the flood.
I've heard that there are a lot of passages that preach this kind of stuff, and I'm just curious, is there really an overwhelming amount?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm just realizing I haven't hosted the show in years. I have a big notebook of useful tidbits of info that I've gathered, and one is a complete listing of all of the deaths in the Bible that were either committed, all the killings that were committed either by God directly or in response to his supposed command.
And you did a show on this. So it's not
Yes.
just in your notebook. You
Yes.
did a show,
Well,
and you can look in our archives for that show.
Is it up there somewhere?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, it's in the multiple millions.
Okay.
Of course, you have to estimate a lot of it, but yeah.
That's pretty overwhelming.
That's in multiple millions, not even counting things like, and they destroyed this entire city and killed everyone in it without seeing fit to tell you how many people that was. It's still in the multiple millions. So.
Wow. That's pretty intense.
There's a lot of that in the Old
when
Testament.
I said that, I mean, their faces totally went blank, and they had a King James Bible with them, but that's not the Old Testament. And I said,
King James has Old Testament in it.
Print some of the Old Testament scriptures up that said that from Deuteronomy, and they weren't really interested in having me do that.
Well, a lot of Christians aren't familiar with the Bible very very well, and they've been led down the rosy path of all the joy and wonder bread that's there, and they're not even aware of these passages. And often you can really surprise them by saying, "Hey, look at this, and here's God ordering this thing," and of course, then you get into rationalizations like, "Oh, well, they were wicked, or they deserved it, or they blah blah blah," and that's kind of a little rabbit hole.
Ultimately, when you corner them, they may well resort to, we believe that God made up the rules of right and wrong, so anything that he does is automatically right because he says so. Therefore, those killings don't count because they deserved it.
Well, can I ask you a question? Well, if God orders people to kill, and then he says, in his commandments that thou shalt not kill, isn't that kind of like telling people to do as I say and not as I do?
Absolutely.
It is, but also that's why they call him the divine lawgiver. If they called him a divine law follower, then you could catch him, right? Then you could say, no, he did this thing here and that thing there.
Yeah,
as soon as he's a guy who's the source of the rules, that makes him the guy who could break them at any time.
Right. He puts you in this world, he can take you out.
And if you corner a lot of Christians, they will fall back to that. That morality doesn't count when it's God doing the immoral thing.
But the
because
gist of
by
this
definition, anything he does is right.
But the gist of this is anybody that buys into this stuff has got their moral compass spinning in all sorts of different directions. Right? It's just so much clearer if you put this thing aside. And say, would I want to have someone kill me? No. Well, maybe I shouldn't kill them.
Right.
Do I want to live in a society where people are killing each other? Do I want to live in a society where people don't kill each other? It's pretty simple stuff, right?
Yeah, no, I understand completely. And my last thing I really wanted to ask you guys is next time is there a better approach I can take to next time they come here to totally be able to fend off anything they say to me? I know you guys are very good at arguing with people, so is there anything I could...
It's not a question of approach, it's a question of knowing stuff.
Okay.
That's true.
Knowing stuff, and also, having a good bullshit detector.
Yeah.
Because just anything they tell you, recast it as fair an analogy as you can make in your head. Run your mind through that, and ask yourself, this thing they're telling me, this kind of assumption they're asking me to make, would that be reasonable and fair in any other circumstances? And if the answer is no, you've got them, and you tell them so.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Well, let me throw out another thing, too. If you're interested in Jehovah's Witnesses in particular, you might go look at and study up on all the different predictions they've made that the end of the world is going to happen and that have been wrong. And you might make a little list of those and point those out, and And then you can also look up, there's a passage in the Bible about preaching false religion and false doctrine. And you can kind of put those two together and
Watch their little brains
ask them
explode.
whether they accept the punishment for preaching false religion. Anyway, so that would be one thing I'd maybe throw out for fun.
Okay, Dan?
But that'll
Well,
pretty
thank
much
you guys
guarantee
very
they
much
won't
for
come
taking
back.
my call. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
You're welcome, Dan.
Have
Thanks for
fun.
calling.
Have fun.
Good luck to you, sir.
I should add that you know, for people who have never debated with theists, it's hard. It's hard because the theists don't logical arguments are not generally accepted by theists. They're locked into this emotional thing, and it's very hard to convince a theist of anything that goes against what they believe and those doctrines. But it's a good exercise, I think, for people to for atheists to go through these arguments and learn these things and understand them, because it helps you critically think. And there are lots of good reasons. There's reasons why we do this sort of show. We're doing the show for the fence sitters. We're doing the show for people who haven't made up their mind.
Yeah.
We're educating people. And those are the sorts of people that we're really trying to reach, I think.
And those are also not the sorts of people who tend to come door to door.
Right.
So
Right.
if there's ever been a case of a door-to-door religion salesman getting disabused of their religion by some atheist whose door they come to, right, and going away a non-believer, if that's ever happened, I'd sure love to hear of it.
Oh, that'd be a great story.
As far as I have never heard of such a thing. I suppose it's remotely possible.
And it's not because we aren't right. It's just because it takes a long time, I think, to unlearn all this baggage and get rid of all this baggage. And it's not an epiphany sort of thing at all.
But one word of caution. I've heard a lot from believers about encounters they've had with non-believers who did not know their stuff, who did not argue well, who passed on hearsay that could easily be disproved, right? Who did a bad job, who resulted in that believer going away more certain that they were right.
Yep.
So be careful.
Yep.
Okay, shall we go on?
Yeah.
We got Timothy in Gainesville, Florida. Timothy, are you there?
Oh, hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, thanks for waiting.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm a big fan of your show and everything. The first time calling in.
Good.
I wanted to say, like, on the topic of the prosperity gospel, it seems very similar to a type of scam that's been going on the internet for, like, the past decade or so. It's the Nigerian 419 scam. Are you familiar with it?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
It's called an advance fee fraud. Let me just brief the viewers what this is. It's basically you see these in emails all the time that there's this big pot of money. I'm some dignitary. If you apparently have your Skype or some sort of feedback going, so if you can look into that, please do.
Okay, yeah, I'm on Skype.
Okay, so this advance fee thing is, there's this big pot of money, and I trust you, and you're going to invest it for me, and you're going to have it in your hands soon. We just need to get some financial information from you, there's been a snag. We're going to need some money to release this, and it's kind of nickels and dimes holding this bait out of this $1 million or $10 million or whatever.
Right.
And that's the scam. Is there's never a payout, and I guess that's true with this. Is there's not necessarily a payout. I mean, if you in the prosperity gospel, if you get a payout from somehow, that God's going to steal credit for it, or they're going to steal credit, but it's not necessarily going to be because of your tithing.
Yeah. Though it is also very common for those Nigerian scam letters to be couched in religious language. Right?
Oh, yeah.
To say, well, I'm a preacher in this country, or I'm this good Christian woman in this country. And there's a reason for that, too, and that's called affinity fraud. That is fraud where the victim is manipulated by the idea that, oh, this person who I'm talking to is part of the same group as me. In this case, it would be religion, right? That's why I can trust them.
Yeah, there's all sorts of mechanisms. There's, you have to keep it quiet because of this and that, or I trust you, and therefore, you're a special person. It's playing. That's
Sure.
related to what you were saying. So there's a lot of variations. I get about 5 of these a day. Seriously, I get.
Yeah.
There's some hilarious websites up there where people have responded to them. Like some guy wrote back and identified himself as Colonel Sanders
Oh yeah, like
from Kentucky Fried Chicken, and oh my gosh, it's hilarious. Just
there is
the lengths to which those scammers are willing to go to like fool themselves into believing they've still got you on the hook is pretty amazing.
I've heard of cases where somebody who really knew what they were doing were able to scam the scammers.
Yes, and get like a little tiny plastic bag with some gold dust in it or something to prove that it was all true. So anyway, yeah, scams. Anything else, Timothy?
Nope, that's pretty much it.
Thanks for calling, man.
Yep, you too. Have a good day.
Yeah.
You too.
If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Wow, people really want to talk
That
about your
sounds
topic today,
Well, good.
Don. Now we have Stephen in Hampton, Virginia. Stephen? You
Hey
there?
guys, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. I just wanted to share a story with you guys about the prosperity gospel, if I could.
Oh,
Okay.
that'd be great. First-hand stuff is great.
Yeah, my sister is Christian. She goes to a non-denominational church, and they do this whole thing of, this prosperity thing where they give to the church, they give their time, give their money, and they wait for their blessings. And it's pretty funny because I'm an atheist and, never stepped into a church once, and I've been so, I guess I could use the word blessed. I got a house, got a great job. But her family...
Which you work for, right?
Sorry?
Which you work for, honestly, right?
Yeah, I work hard for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good thing to mention.
Well, but let's be fair, and I don't want to give people the wrong impression of how to live their lives. I have experienced a number of incredible lucky breaks in my life, and I'm also an atheist, so
Okay.
I think that may actually
Well, sometimes
be
you create
even-
your own luck, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I hear you.
Yeah, so go on, Stephen.
It's funny that she is so, like, her and her family are so, devout into giving their time and money, and they've had the worst luck for years. They're losing jobs. They have no money. They couldn't get a house they wanted. It's just one bad thing on top of the next.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, they've tried to convert me so many times. I'm like, why would I want to give myself to a God that is not going to help me out when I have all these great things and, I don't need God's help. And they say, well, that's Satan. That's Satan blocking God. Satan's showing you that you can live your life the way you want it, and he is, you want to use the word blessed, Satan is blessing you or cursing you, whatever.
Hey, but if the motivation for worshiping some dude is how much stuff he'll give you, then, Satan apparently is the one who's coming through.
Right, so good for him, right? He's got more evidence going for him than God.
To touch on a tangent here, often the ministers hold themselves up as the one you should look at. And the ministers are the ones with the Mercedes and the multi-million-dollar houses and flying around in jets and these sorts of things. And so you're not supposed to look under the hood. You're not supposed to look at the common people who are being taken by the scam. You're supposed to look at the scammers.
And yet, as we said, the minister is the one who's receiving all these regular tithes.
Right.
The most of people can
It's working
bring
for him.
themselves to part with.
Anyway.
Well, yeah.
So you don't think it's a good idea?
I mean, if they think they're going to get eternal life afterwards, and give up their money, but of course not.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for calling, Stephen.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for the story, and good luck to you. More good luck to you. Now we've got Ali in Chicago, Illinois. Ali, you there?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Am I saying that right? Ali, Ali,
It's actually Ali, but it's okay.
Ali,
don't worry.
thank you.
Well, welcome.
What can we do for you?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about something that was actually mentioned on a previous show of yours, and in regards to how moderates covers for fanatics, and just kind of give you back information of what I'm talking about. When I was watching this show, Jeff, you said on episode 634 that beliefs have implications, and that was like the 10-minute, 40-second mark. And then, sorry,
Yeah, but we're not going to know those things. But
had stated at 1634 that I don't consider them, the moderate believers, to be anything great harm, with the exception of the fact that they provide cover for those who do harm by using the same labels, the same holy books, and the same and all such a thing. So, what I wanted to ask you, I'm sorry, am I interrupting? My fault.
No, please go on.
No, yeah,
We're listening.
I'm agreeing with the sentiment. Keep going.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask you actually was, and I understand this is sort of the motivation to also kind of going against moderate believers, wouldn't it be better to actually support the moderate believers against the extremists? Because this sort of argument can be equally applied to non-religious views. For instance, if you don't mind giving some examples, the fact that even though evolution is true, the fact that it's true has also made it the fact that people have misinterpreted it, and, social Darwinists use it for ill means. For instance, Hitler using Nietzsche's writings as some sort of justification for some of his ideas. So couldn't we equally apply this to factual, what you consider very factual beliefs?
Well, I'm not going to argue that people holding factual beliefs are at fault for people misusing factual beliefs, because we've got to, we need to be holding on to factual beliefs. And in that case, people misusing them are a problem, but the problem's not going to be solved by everybody abandoning the facts, right? See what I'm saying? The cost is too high. Now, when we're talking about non-factual beliefs, abandoning non-factual beliefs in order to reduce the amount of abuse of those non-factual beliefs, the cost is zero.
See, I don't
but
no,
perceived
I'm not going to be stubborn here. I just think that it's the factualness or the what you call the mythological aspect of the belief itself doesn't seem to me to have any what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't seem to have any to make any difference in that sense, because what I'm trying to say is for the purposes of your cause, for getting rid of the fanatics, it would seem better to work with the moderates, even though you may not agree with all their views on God, etc.
Well,
because even if you get rid of all the moderate beliefs, it's not necessarily going to make sure that the fanatics are going to go away. They may just be, for all intents and purposes, they may just be more influenced to be fanatical because of what they see you're trying to do.
Okay.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the difficulties there is that the fanatics, the fundamentalists, generally have Scripture on their side. They can generally point to the Bible verses that say, God really wants this, and they generally know their Bible pretty well. The moderates really don't have a leg to stand on because they're on such flimsy ground. They're kind of taking bits and pieces of the religion and ignoring a lot of the rest of it. They're on shaky ground. They really can't win any arguments with the fundamentalists. They're in a bad situation that way. In a sense, the atheists are the only ones who have the ability to argue against them by escaping the whole biblical worldview in order to get at the right answer. We have the evidence on our side and these sorts of things. The purpose of our show is to reach out to people who may be fence-sitting or whatever, but they may or may not be religious moderates. A lot of religious moderates are pretty closed-minded to, ideas that counter their religious beliefs. So I don't know that we can reach those people, and I don't know that they can help win against the fundamentalists because they don't have the scriptural basis to do it. They'd have to pretty much come to our side, I think, completely, and that's a tough row to hoe.
I could see your perspective there. Of course, I would disagree to some extent because I think that once people kind of learn more about their traditions, they tend to be less fanatic. But of course, we have a disagreement there. I know that, but. Also, the reason I also brought this subject up was previously, Don, you had stated that variations in beliefs kind of show the evolution of religious views, and also how there's not some sort of objective monolithic, structure. And what I want to say was also, can't this equally be applied to, political theories? Should we get rid of those things as well because there are we should get rid of politics altogether because there's variations of
in those cases, nobody's claiming that there's a God there, an all-powerful, all-knowing God that is perfect, right? It's only the religions that's making those sorts of claims. So absolutely, politics is a human endeavor, and there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be going up blind alleys. There's going to be things that happen bad. Hopefully, we can learn from them and move on. But religion, and especially monotheistic religions, where you're saying there's one God we're following, you have to hold those folks, I think, to a higher standard, in that if they can communicate to that God, and this God is the author of morality and these sorts of things, then by gosh, there should be some higher level of behavior. You should have a lot more continuity, a lot more focus of effort. Because all these people want to talk to that God and want to please that God, and why aren't they all behaving the same way? Mm-hmm. So that's the point that I was trying to get at there.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to call in and ask those questions and just kind of have like a small discussion. I don't have much time, but it's okay if I call you guys maybe next week?
You can call in every single week as long as you got a good question and something interesting to talk about.
Okay,
so by all means.
Thank you so much.
All right, Holly. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good luck to you. And, I wanted, oh gosh, see, I've hung up on him, and I have one more point to make of his question about working with the moderates.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure you went away in there too.
I think he brought up the example of Darwinism and the misuse of Darwinism, let's say he meant social Darwinism, right?
I think he was talking about the idea that we don't want to alienate religious believers on the topic of evolution, because a lot of religious believers who are moderates believe in evolution, and they could be an ally in getting it taught properly. I think that's where he was going with
no, that. I am not going to say as long as you believe true thing A, I will therefore shut up about your belief in untrue thing B. That's not how it works, if that's what he meant.
Yeah, most atheists don't buy into that idea. A lot of scientists do. They think, well, maybe we should make some incremental progress here where we're teaching science. You have people that argue that. Most atheists don't buy into that. Most atheists are kind of, let's get at the real truth, and let's not. As
allies against the fanatics, right? There's what I want to get at, right? I don't see moderate religionists going after religious extremists. I don't see it. The reason I don't see it is because of that old saw, people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. There's very little that a moderate believer can say about why a fanatical believer is wrong, other than, well, I think you're just misinterpreting it and being mean. What is ultimately said, what's in the Holy Book is the same for both groups. That makes it very, very difficult for them. Nor do I see moderates going back and saying, hey, you know what, these passages in the Bible, getting back to your talk today, these passages in the Bible saying that, oh yeah, God will give you money if you kowtow to him, right? Those passages are causing trouble, therefore us moderates are going to get rid of them. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. I see basically no evidence. Now, there are extreme cases, like I happen to know in the little bit of research I did to prepare myself for your talk today, I also found a list of major evangelists who oppose the whole prosperity gospel thing. There are some, right? And I'm glad they're opposing that. But that gets us back to this question of, well, am I then going to stop arguing with them, stop exposing what I think are the things that those guys believe that I think are not true? Am I going to stop talking about that because I think they'll stop being against this other thing that's bad? No.
not
No,
gonna
I
happen.
won't. That's just not. That's not how. That's not
Well,
how
we can
knowledge
encourage
works.
them in a limited way.
The progress of human knowledge is not about, playing a little game with, okay, we'll allow you to believe this untrue thing and shut up about how silly we think that is, as long as you'll join with us in opposing this other untrue thing. It doesn't work that way.
Well, politics works that way, but atheism doesn't very much.
It's not atheism, it's knowledge.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
A
that's
thing
right.
is either true or it's not. Bottom
That's right.
line.
Yeah, we subscribe to more of the scientific idea of,
Yeah.
let's test this, and if it's true,
Yeah.
it's true. If it's not, it's not.
We have Joe Zemecki on line 3. Joe, calling from Austin. How you doing, Joe?
Hey, I'm doing great. Alan
Awesome.
and Jeff, great to see y'all on TV again.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
What's up?
Well, I wanted to talk about your topic, prosperity, evangelism, I guess I would call it. But also, your last caller brought up something I wanted to mention.
Uh-huh.
I'm one of those atheist activists who many Christians have asked to do just that, to just appeal to the moderate Christians out there in a friendly way and try to build bridges so that we can both focus on going after the fundamentalists and their crazy tactics. And one thing I always respond with is by saying the fundamentalists are, like you said, a little more honest to their Bible.
Oh, that's another good point.
But
Ultimately, the arguments are on their side.
Right. But also the moderate Christians out there, who seem to be the majority of Christians, they actually enable the fundamentalists and their tactics by not going after them or focusing on them like we would, but also by simply going to those same churches and tithing, and especially with the Catholic Church, when it comes to the sex scandals. I believe that there's so much sex scandal going on at the Catholic Church around the world that every church member who goes there and shows their support without criticism, without questioning, and then puts some money in the plate certainly is helping enable the fundamentalists who run that cult, and they cause more harm. But it's hard for me as an atheist activist to want to go to moderate Christians, because they're also the ones sometimes who turn to me and say things like, look, I'm not a fundamentalist Christian, don't get me wrong, but where do you get your morals? And why are you lecturing me when you're the one with the problem? You have
Right.
a psychological problem. Do you hate your father? Things like that, right? And so,
Yeah, a lot of the same problems are present in both camps. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
of course, and when we see Fred Phelps and the God Hates Fags church in Topeka, Kansas, when they talk about how much God hates gays, and then we see the counter-protesters who are mostly Christian, and they hold signs up against the Fred Phelps gang, the Westboro Baptist Church, and they're saying things like God actually loves gays. It's almost laughable for us to look at one side versus the other and say, who's the fundamentalist here? Because, I mean, it's in black and white. I've met so many Christians. I've met Sunday school teachers who readily and gladly admit they've never read the entire Bible. And it's jaw-dropping to hear how they really want their religion to be the official government religion of our society, but they haven't researched it half as much as your average atheist, and not even an atheist activist. Anyway, I just had to say that. And the prosperity part, Jesus was a pauper. I made a video about this where so many megachurches exist all over our country, and rich people driving their BMWs and Mercedes and Audis to sit for an hour and worship a pauper. Now, where's the sense in that, right?
Well, he was like the prosperity ministers in that he was sort of living off the fat of the land. He was taking taking money where he could get it. So
He's probably collecting the tithes. Somebody asked you.
Well,
Yeah.
it's always
supposedly he was a
good for some
carpenter, but
comedy.
I don't
You're
know if
right,
he
Joe.
built
I mean,
anything.
I got to be as fair as absolutely possible. I do think we can cut, like Catholics you were talking about, right? I do think we can cut some Catholics some slack for remaining Catholics, even though it's looking really bad for the leadership of the organization. In the same way that I personally was not a big supporter of our previous president, but I paid my taxes while that guy was in office. There is a sense in which, okay, fine, sure, you guys want to stick with the organization even though they are apparently misbehaving in certain ways. But you would like, I would like to see at least some public outcry from them about this. And I guess there is a little, right? I mean, there are people who protest the child abuses that have occurred all over the world, and they sue the church and stuff. There's some of that.
Yeah, but they still seem to be very deferent to the
it would be
clergy.
nice. It would be nice to see them, wake up and go, "Hey, these guys, just because they got the special hats and the special frocks, that doesn't mean they are actually good people." But anyway. So thanks for calling, man.
Yes, and I will continue watching. Thanks. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Yeah,
You
Joe's
wanna-
a
you wanna hit-
longtime member of.
ACA
in
member,
fact, as I recall, instrumental in their even beating this TV show.
Yeah.
Do I want to what?
Well, hey, after dinner, or after the show, let's go to Threadgills.
Oh, right, I'm supposed to plug Threadgills. The show ends at 6 o'clock, and roughly 6:30 we have the crew and other members of the ACA and supporters.
We've got
and
7 or so
viewers and
people here
things.
in the audience that will be joining us, I think.
Yeah, at Threadgills. That's the Threadgills at 301 West Riverside Drive at roughly 6:30. At the desk, just say you want to sit with the atheists. They know where we are.
Yeah, we're well known there. Do you want to do your little news story on the Pope or
Yeah,
not?
I guess this has come up a couple of times. So in case people aren't paying attention in the media, or the media is not paying attention, there is the latest development in the scandal with the current Pope of the Catholic Church being found to have been complicit in the cover-up of child sexual abuse by priests.
While he was a cardinal.
Before he was the Pope, right?
Yeah.
But while he was a cardinal, he was it. I could read the letter. The letter it is translated from whatever language it was originally written in, and it's very flowery. And you're not going to find the words, "Hey guys, we got to hide this because we want to be able to keep on, raping little children, and so we can't let this get out." I mean, there's no admission like that, and I don't think anybody thinks that inside the Catholic Church there's that exact attitude. What there is apparently is an attitude that the survival and reputation of the Church is more important than preserving the safety of children in their care. The relevant section is, let's see. This court, although it regards the arguments presented in favor of removal in this case to be of grave significance, nevertheless deems it necessary to consider the good of the universal church together with that of the petitioner, and it is also unable to make light of the detriment that granting the dispensation can provoke with the community of Christ's faithful. I'm not sure even exactly how to interpret that. Bottom line, this letter said, "Oh, you want to kick out this exposed child molesting priest? No, let's think about this a little bit more, because that could be bad for the church." On a side note, there is an effort underway to have the Pope arrested when he visits the United Kingdom. I think it's later this month.
So in the U.S., he's claimed diplomatic immunity from any sort of involvement in this sort of thing.
And these lawyers say, this is one of the two lawyers talking.
Head of some state.
He says there is every possibility of legal action against the Pope occurring. We have come to the view that the Vatican is not actually a state under international law. It is not recognized by the UN. It does not have borders that are policed, and its relations are not of a full diplomatic nature.
The U.S. got it wrong.
So these lawyers in Britain are arguing that no, Pope's just a guy, and he is under suspicion of being complicit in crimes, and if he comes to our shores, we're going to try to get him arrested. That will be an interesting thing to watch the development of. In fact, we have Calvin from England. He might have a comment about this. Calvin, are you there?
Hello, yes.
Hi, thanks for calling.
Yeah, just love the show, by the way.
Thank you.
All the way over here, it's great. Well, I didn't know that Pope's coming over here, but if he does, I certainly hope we do arrest him. It'd be quite funny.
Funny.
We hope you do.
Because that's really why we have legal systems in our respective nations, because they're hilarious.
Yeah. Well, rule of law and all that good stuff.
Right. Well, I was originally calling about, do you remember the caller a couple of times ago, Ali, I think his name was?
Yeah.
He was saying that some Christians like to go evolution inspired Adolf Hitler to commit genocide and kill Jews and master race and all that sort of stuff.
There is that claim, and I don't buy it, but there is that claim, yes.
Well, what I was getting at was evolution happens, but it's how you use something that happens. So take a knife, you can use that to carve chicken or you can use it to kill someone. Doesn't mean that we should not teach how to make knives.
Right. Right, and that was kind of my point to Ali, that though I'm not, this gets stickier if we want to talk about, say, guns and free access to like high-powered automatic weapons, right? Those physically exist too. Those physically exist too. But when my point is, when the cost is, well, you give up some beliefs that aren't true in order to prevent the misuse of those beliefs. Cost is way lower than when you say, somebody might stub their toe on a doorstop, therefore we're going to have a law that says we can't have doorstops. Those are two completely different cases.
Yeah, I would agree, because, there's no point saying you shouldn't teach evolution just because it can be used for bad. It can also be used for a lot of good.
And if you're going to, with evolution, those people that argued for oh God, now I've forgotten the term, tried to apply evolution to society.
Right.
Social Darwinism, thank you. Those people are wrong. They're demonstrably, factually wrong in what is implied by the theory of evolution, and that can be argued on that basis. But when it's two groups of people with a great big book of multiple choice that is the foundation of both religious groups' beliefs, right, there's no real argument you can make that either side is right. It's all going to come down to their personal interpretations.
Or some sort of argument by popularity or something.
Both sides believe that their interpretation is the right one, but there's no way to actually, demonstrably prove that, where there is with things like, how evolution works. So, yeah, I thought his analogy was very poor.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much. Enjoyed chatting. Keep watching the show, and cheers.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you
See
for
if
calling.
you can find out about that attempt to get the Pope arrested.
I'll write to my local MP and give him a suggestion.
Awesome. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for calling, Calvin. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Okay. How are we doing on time? All right. We've got Dylan in Morgantown, North Carolina. Hi, Dylan.
Hey. I was wanting to ask you guys how you deal with the people who are telling you to back off and just to let them believe what they want to, because I've had a lot of trouble with those people.
You've had a lot of people telling you to back off?
Yeah, and to just say, why don't you just let me believe whatever it is I want to?
The reason is because the people that believe those things want to get their way in government, and they want to get their way in law. And we've got examples in other countries of what happens when the religious powers get control of government and the law. And that needs to be fought if we don't want that to happen here.
And there's a more subtle thing, too, and that is beliefs inform actions. So if you hold something, if you believe something that's not true, you can't help but act on that eventually. And those actions add up to things that are not going to be good for society or good for that individual in the long run. It's a tougher argument to make. But as far as you being told to back off, I have to ask, sort of, are you kind of an evangelical atheist, or are you going after people? Are you rubbing people's nose?
Going after people per se.
Okay, I had to ask.
Occasional argument.
So what? Can you give me the context of this sort of situation? Are you are you lacking social graces for this particular thing, or are you just being honest with how you feel and challenging people on when issues come up?
Yeah, I was just being honest with how I feel when these issues come up, and really I was just wondering how you guys deal with that. Okay, it was a matter of curiosity. And also I've got a couple other questions for you as well, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, before you get to that...
I have one more comment about your first thing. I mean, there is such a thing as being a jerk about being an atheist, right? Just because you think that... I mean, everybody likes to be right, because being right or thinking that you are right is a very heady experience, and it can make you feel really good about yourself. The important thing, though, is to really be right, and then... even then, there's such a thing as being a jerk about it.
So, and we're not accusing you, by the way. We're just.
But that line that you could cross between just being very concerned about the difference between fact and fantasy, and the other side of the line where you're just being a jerk, is not in the place where most believers think it is. They think that line is right as soon as you open your mouth.
Oh, right, yeah.
And that's not true.
That's true.
So,
yeah, by all means, use your First Amendment rights, make points, be educated, these sorts of things. Go for it. We all have different styles. Jeff has one style. I have a different style. Yeah. Everybody in the ACA has got, even all our public figures. So that's part of the reason why we have so many co-hosts on this show, is because we do have different styles and different viewpoints and these sorts of things, and yours is just as valid. So go for it.
So what else did you have there, Dylan?
Also, this was a question somebody else wanted me to ask. In your experience, what has caused a person to deconvert? As in, what's most effective? Emotional appeal, logic, etc. What do you think causes people to deconvert?
I can take this.
Yeah, go ahead.
You might want to take a look at the testimonials area of the ACA website. There's about 10 or so people who have told their story about this is how I came to atheism, and nearly all of them are certainly, of all the ones that came from somewhere, like some belief, nearly all of them said, I started having doubts, I started asking questions, and over many, many years, often something like 10 years, I came to reject it all, and I'm happy and free now. And it's a long process. It's never an epiphany thing. If we have anybody writing the show saying, "Hey, you made me an atheist," it was really because they were pretty close to being an atheist to begin with. It's a long process, and it's very much an intellectual process, I would say.
Right.
So that would be.
Well, that was all I wanted.
Okay, Dylan. Thanks for calling, man. Good luck to you, sir.
All right, bye.
And we'll go to Leo in the UK.
All right.
Leo, you there?
Yeah, hi.
Hi,
how
Leo.
you doing?
Good.
Good.
What time is it there?
Almost midnight.
Okay. Thanks for staying up with us.
Oh, no problem. You're
okay.
But yeah, Jeff, I had a comment to you saying that the Catholics needed a break, as it were, because they don't necessarily all have elected the Pope, or the Pope isn't necessarily responsible for all of them. I wanted to make this distinction between the Catholic Church and, say, any other Protestant belief that doesn't recognize the organization as an intrinsic part of the belief. Whereas the thing that separates Catholics is that they believe that the Pope is divinely mandated through apostolic succession. In other words, from the first apostle to now, there has been an unbroken chain. It has been selected and chosen by God. The Holy Spirit sits on the bishops as they nominate the Pope. So this is a selection by God of who the person who will actually run and lead the church into the next generation. And anyone who follows that, the Catholic belief, accepts the Pope, I think, as the person who would actually lead them into what is right and what is wrong, and he's chosen by God. So if he's wrong, and if he's so horrific, then I don't think that any of them can stand up and hold a hand and say, yeah, that's okay, God isn't at fault.
Well,
courts actually commanded them.
That's a very good point. And I'll tell you what, I will back off from my previous statement and say that I think in actual practice, you don't find believers in any religion being uniformly in agreement with the teachings of their own church. No matter what you say about what is taught in the Catholic Church is correct, but not. I've met Catholics who don't, they'll just go, yeah, well, that's what they say. But I'm still a Catholic, and I still think that it's the right kind of thing. But yeah, over here, that's very common. So I'll back off from my previous statement and say only those people who don't actually take everything that they're taught by their church that seriously can maybe deserve a little bit of wiggle room. Okay?
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. I think it's very important to. I think that more people now are leaving the Catholic Church for that reason, but I think it should be made a point.
Yeah, that's a very good point you raised.
Small point that I wanted to just, because you were asking about this arrest thing that Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens are looking into.
Now, I have a slight correction on that. Dawkins has said that his only involvement was Hitchens came to him with the idea. Dawkins recommended a civil rights lawyer that he knew, and that's it. It's Hitchens. It's Christopher Hitchens who went looking for the lawyers.
In that regard,
okay.
They actually claimed that he said that he would arrest him, which some other people referenced the Dawkins website where he said he didn't, but the page wasn't loading, so I couldn't.
So this is a little distraction.
So anyway.
But that aside, basically the idea was that, Hitchens and Dawkins were looking with a human rights lawyer to build a case against arresting the Pope if he were to come to the UK. And
right. As I understand it, there's a scheduled visit coming up by the Pope.
Yes, quite soon. Yeah. And I really hope I would have been the one to arrest him, but I doubt that didn't happen. But yeah, it was weird.
Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting TV, as they say.
Yeah.
Historically,
I don't think anyone would go through with it, but I really hope someone does.
Well, nobody has the balls here in the United States to do it, so we're really hoping you all do it.
Historically, Britain has had issues with the Catholic Church before, as I recall. So
it's not necessarily that it was necessarily atheist. It was more
right,
Anglican Church and
correct,
rather than
and a wacky king you had.
That's it.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, just wanted to make that comment. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Leo.
Good show.
Thanks.
Good luck to you, sir. How are we doing? I have a note here of when I'm supposed to. Okay, we can get at least one more in. We'll go to Theodore in Sweden.
Hello.
Hi, Theodore.
Hey. How you doing?
Good. You? Good.
I'm doing good. Kind of late, but I'm doing good. Anyway, I was thinking, you were talking about, well, among other things, arresting the Pope. And we actually had a case here in Sweden a couple of years ago, about 5 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
There was this pastor in a small town here in Sweden who he had some of his congregation so enamored or in love with him that he actually was able to have one of them kill 2 girls.
Wow.
2 nannies of his. And they actually really did arrest him, and he's in prison now. And
oh, sure.
I don't think he's getting out anytime soon. That seemed like quite a development, even here in Sweden, which is
really you can here in the U.S. there have been stories of pastors arrested for fraud, arrested for murder, arrested for all kinds of crazy things. It's the Pope story is, I think a bigger deal because that's the head of the organization.
Yeah, obviously.
It's the only comparable thing I can think of is, Jim and Tammy Baker here in the U.S. or Swagger.
Well, no. And he's claimed diplomatic immunity in a case here in the United States as supposedly the head of the Vatican State.
Yeah.
So So that's what makes this a little more interesting. To fill in what Jeff said, there's an organization here in the U.S. for our U.S. audience called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and they publish a monthly newsletter where it's two whole pages every month of what they call black-collar crimes, of all these different ministers and things that have been caught doing this very things or sentenced to this or whatever. And I guess for folks that are atheists, you know, they seem to you know, there's no notion that these folks belong on any sort of pedestal.
Right.
You know, there's no notion that they're better than anybody else. And in many cases, I think they're worse. Right. They have more temptations, and they have more opportunity to do bad things. And in some cases, like in this pedophilia thing, you know, having the cover of being a minister or a priest or whatever allows you to have access to situations where you wouldn't otherwise. So it may actually attract those sorts of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
There's a connection. It's kind of like chairman in the business or stuff like that. But
Okay.
I was thinking that it's, well, might not be as new in the States as it is in Sweden as such, but that might be because we're not really big on religion generally.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that, do you think that is progressing in a sense? Is it accelerating all over the world that we are starting to see that we can hold the priesthood accountable? Like,
that's a really good question. I'm not sure. It doesn't feel to me like, in general, and then again, that might be just because I'm in the U.S., but it doesn't feel to me like, in general, priests and ministers are any more likely to be held accountable for crimes they've committed now than it did, say, 20 years ago. But the outcry against the Pope, again, does seem like a different kind of thing, like a different level of, you know, awareness of the potential risks.
Yeah,
so I don't know. It's a really good question.
I kind of see that as something. It's special in a way. It symbolizes something, maybe.
Yeah. I hope so. I think we, in the United States, I think there is a little bit of a movement that is feeding into this atheist movement of people being a little bit fed up with religion and the sort of goofy things that are done in the name of religion. I sense that there is some movement towards let's step away from this. We have a group here in the United States, a demographic group called the nuns, the none of the aboves, the people who don't identify with particular religions, and this is the largest growing group in the United States right now, and I'm hoping this trend continues. Now, not all of those people are atheists, but these are people who have said, enough of organized religion, I'm going to step away from it. And I think that these are people sort of on their way to becoming atheists or potential atheists. And I think that this is a good thing. I think the Pope scandal, in some ways, is a blessing for us. It's a way for people to be made more aware of the abuses that are going on and make it more socially acceptable to talk about these sorts of things and to register our disgust and our frustration. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for taking my call.
Man, thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Right.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
They are putting the credits up. Does that mean we're done?
Well, I think we're pretty close to done. About 30 seconds.
We have 30 seconds. Should we try to see what Andrew can tell us in 30 seconds?
No. All
right. Well, Andrew, stay on the line. We'll talk to you, do an after-show thing.
Or shoot us an email at tv@atheistexperience.
Or that.
And we'll try to answer it. Take care.
Bye-bye.